I've read things that suggest a lot of the students knew it was coming. Some students even stayed home. I think the school has some responsibility here for sure.
Well, the question is whether it's criminal responsibility in that instance. I mean, certainly, can you charge school officials with allowing a student to come back to school in a situation where there was some knowledge that he might be potentially dangerous? That seems to really be a high bar in terms of, or maybe a low bar in terms of, holding them accountable. Certainly, civil liability. The school, if there was that type of negligence, if you have a student who's dangerous to other students, I mean, I've prosecuted those cases where you have a known threats of students. My client gets injured. The school's responsible for those injuries if they knew or should have known of the conduct and didn't act appropriately. Criminal charges seem inappropriate for the school, in my estimation, unless I hear more. Criminal charges for the parents, as I said, from what we know so far, putting that gun in that student's hands, especially given everything else that was going on with him, I think we're going to be seeing charges filed promptly.
Yeah, I think that's a fair bet. All right, our next comment comes from Lasad Driss. Lasad says, what about the parents of Kyle Rittenhouse? No difference. This is a great one because I want to discuss this with you, James. There's a lot of differences. People misunderstood what the parents did. They think that the parent drove Kyle across state lines with a gun. No, they didn't. She drove him from Illinois to Wisconsin to be with a friend of his who actually had the gun. And in her mind, and what she thought was going on and what was actually going to go on, at least according to the testimony of Kyle and his friend, is that they were going to go hunting together. So really, it's a very, very different case.
Well, absolutely. What came out in the press in the Rittenhouse case seemed not to align itself with the actual evidence and facts. And even during the trial, as we learned more, what came out didn't seem to align itself with the absolute facts. So, yes, very different. I mean, the mom apparently didn't know that Kyle Rittenhouse was going to be going to that protest with a firearm. But in this instance, you have a 15-year-old who has behavior problems, and the father just purchased a handgun for him, and the kid is posting on social media bragging about it. So again, seems like a clear recipe for disaster, although I would argue that putting Kyle Rittenhouse in the middle of a protest in a volatile situation with him walking around with an AR-15 was a recipe for disaster as well. But the parent don't seem as culpable in that case, in the Rittenhouse situation, as they do here in Michigan.
Excellent points there. I appreciate that. Our next comment comes from Helen Gemez. Helen says, I don't know about charges. I believe they should be investigated because he is their son, and of course, he's their responsibility. And you know what? Online, a lot of folks are, of course, gun folks, and they say, look, they're very upset at the family because whether they gave it to him or not, if you buy a gun, you're responsible for that gun. You need to keep that in a place where they can't get it, especially if you have a son who's having some behavioral issues. We don't know exactly what the problems were with the school, but he's having problems with the school. So certainly, I mean, it is as sure as the sun is going to come up tomorrow, there's going to be charges against those parents.
Yeah, I mean, in this, I appreciate the comment, but if you're going to have an investigation, there's an investigation to determine whether you're going to consider bringing criminal charges. And what we know so far in terms of that investigation, there seems to be some justification. So investigations are not meaningful unless there's some cloud at the end. If the investigation turns up for some culpability on those being investigated, then they should be charged. That's the way it works.
Yep, and we're going to find out